Hey there. Today I am going to be discussing the social penetration theory. The social penetration theory is a reciprocating process of self disclosure, measuring the growth and intimacy of a relationship by its depth and its breadth. Basically, how in depth, meaning the more personal we make information, and how wide the breadth, or the range of topics we choose to share with another person, directly affects the bond of that relationship. When done gradually and in increments, self disclosure can create a deeper relationship. The social penetration theory merely explores how to measure that depth. One of the most impactful experiences I've had that pays tribute to the social penetration theory is a conversation I had with my father. We have always had significantly different views regarding politics, me being a liberal and him a conservative. To keep the peace, I purposely stay away from certain subjects. Recently, however, my father decided to open up to me about a more personal topic. The depth that conversation reached caused me to have a better understanding of his views and inspired me to practice patience more readily with certain topics, confirming the social penetration theory. I was born in the early 90s and my dad in the mid 40s. That made him part of the draft system during the Vietnam War. The draft was a selective service system that had the power to pluck young, capable men out of their lives and drop them into the military to fill vacancies during the war. It was the first time media played a role in a war, and the reality of what combat actually entailed sunk into anyone who owned a television set. Soldiers would return from combat with mobs boycotting them. They had to dodge garbage and spit while getting called murderers. Up until this war, veterans were honored, but because of the media coverage overseas, soldiers were harassed and looked down upon. About 50 years later, in 2017, Veterans Affairs finally acknowledged that what has been causing the damage in almost all of my father's internal organs was his exposure to Agent Orange during his time in the war. He brought this up during one of our usual visits because that acknowledgement meant something to him. For the first time, he told me that it took over 25 years for anyone to ever thank him for his service. I couldn't believe how long he had to wait. He broke eye contact to add that he teared up after that woman stopped him in the store. I told him about my own knowledge on the war and how it angers me to hear how soldiers were treated, even though the entire country knew that many of them were forced to join because of the draft. My dad looked at me and told me with long-seated frustration, if it wasn't for Johnson, I would have never went to Vietnam. He looked away to say, imagine fighting a war you didn't even believe in for the people you love. Now that I have shared that experience, I will point out some inferences. What I discovered about my father's political views was that they are deeply rooted in injustices. He is distrusting and is against progressive thinking because for a very long time his sacrifice was judged and went unacknowledged, even by Veterans Affairs. Furthermore, the president who initially sent troops to Vietnam was a Democrat. I understand his views, and I'm lucky enough to still believe in progress because I didn't go through what he did. Although our beliefs are still polar opposites, through social penetration, I was able to understand and deeply respect his beliefs, and in doing so gain the same respect. Now that I relayed my inferences, I will discuss how these inferences can be transferred to other situations. My father was willing to open up to me, and I reciprocated by showing my willingness to understand and display convictions for his experiences. If someone you are inclined to develop a deeper connection with shows willingness for depth, meeting that willingness with understanding is key. My inference on social penetration can be used in many cases. Another example I've experienced recently is a friend opening up to me about her mental illness. I looked into disease and found that there are vitamins that help prevent triggers that she now takes every day. Getting educated about that illness, whether through inquiry or research, was the best thing to do in that situation, not only because it was helpful, but because it shows you care. On a less heavy spectrum, connecting with someone by looking into or asking details about their interests is a good way to maximize on social penetration. In conclusion, the social penetration theory and its use of measurement through depth and breadth of self-disclosure is an essential tool when it comes to a deepening relationship. The extent of self-disclosure made by my father was contingent on his willingness to go deeper and my ability to display my knowledge of something I knew was a huge part in his life. By sharing new information on a personal level, he created the capacity for depth, while breadth was created when we finally talked about a subject never touched on. I made sure to learn about something that my dad lived, and in doing so created a deeper connection. The social penetration theory illustrates the growth of both depth and breadth, and how they are necessary for the progress of a relationship. Depth is the willingness to provide deep-rooted information, while breadth is our willingness to shift around topics. However, I have found that it is also the willingness to learn something new that breadth relies on. Without the drive to research or inquire about something meaningful to another person, we would have to rely solely on finding people with the same interests and same perspective in order to achieve a deeper connection. Ultimately, connection is reliant on the willingness each party displays. Thank you.